Speaking of Veritasium and the project, originally, when Veritasium came out, there were 100 million tokens, but a particular government organization we won't really delve into today possesses roughly 98% of those. What's your interpretation of those tokens? And is it fair to say that the supply of Veritasium is now just around 2 million, about 10% of Bitcoin supply? And then is that enough to do and accomplish what needs to be done?
Okay, so I'm going to comment on that, but let me comment on the last comment you made before I forget it.
Okay.
Those who are concerned about Veritasium's influence in the crypto community, it's unrealistic. And you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. You should always look at, from a business perspective, you should always look at how successful you'll be and not be concerned about how successful somebody else will be. Your success is not necessarily predicated upon the lack of success of somebody else. So we're, small business, a very small business entity. We came up with an idea, we patented it, we're executing on it. Crypto companies are not concerned about the success of Amazon when Amazon charges them AWS service fees to host their website. It's a non-issue, and they pay it without a problem, knowing very well if you do not pay Amazon for use of their property, you don't get to use their property. And Amazon will cut the switch just like that in 30 days. Not much of a grace. Okay?
Sure.
So why isn't anybody concerned about Amazon's influence in the crypto industry? And it is significant, by the way. If Amazon decided not to host or allow anybody in the crypto industry to host on their websites, there'd be a problem. Now, of course, everybody would probably end up moving to Google or Microsoft Azure or Oracle. But that's neither here or there. Nobody considers it because it's considered a simple cost of business. Okay. For whatever reason, especially in the crypto community, intellectual property patents are bad. But only bad if you don't get to use somebody else's stuff for free, right? They're good if someone wants to use your stuff for free because you don't want it to happen. This is a very childish way of looking at things, and it doesn't mesh with law. And that perspective is why there's so much inherent liability in these crypto projects right now, because they weren't realistic when they looked at IP, patent law, etc. It's time to get realistic because real money is starting to flow into the space, and it's time for everybody to go up and look at things from an adult business perspective. So unless you're planning on waging war against Amazon because you don't want to pay for your website hosting fees, just be realistic. Okay. Now, the 98 million tokens. It may not be a secret that I'm not a big fan of the SEC enforcement arm, at least the tactics that they use upon me and personally, my family and my companies. And I signed a consent agreement giving up 98 million tokens. From my perspective, those tokens are gone. Okay. I don't believe, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't believe they could be unlocked without judicial decree. And so the SEC can't access them, only a judge can. And that would be irrelevant whether the SEC accesses them or not. The judge says yes or no, which I don't see the judge would ever say yes, but it's irrelevant. Those tokens' primary use were to purchase access to Veritasium's intellectual capital, products, services, and intellectual property. Okay? I no longer want to do business using that method of payment. So those 98 million tokens are persona non grata. Period. Okay? And because almost everything that runs through blockchain, at least the blockchains I'm familiar with, are NFTs because of their tracement signature and the fact that if they're tainted, they would have less value than others. And then I can probably find out if anybody were to use those tokens if they were released. Okay? And that's a real-time experiment to see if they truly are fungible or not fungible. Okay? And, Bitcoin is an NFT. You ask the people who allegedly hacked and tried to launder the Bitcoin taken from Bitfinex, or you can ask the people who donated Bitcoin to the Canadian trucker convoy movement after the Bitcoin got frozen. You ask them if their frozen Bitcoin is worth less or more than Bitcoin that can freely be moved and spent. The answer is no. And if one Bitcoin is worth less than another Bitcoin, then it's non-fungible by definition. Okay?
Yeah, that's That's a really interesting perspective. I've seen you speak about that recently. I know that I've talked to other people that have been involved and they've been miners of Bitcoin, and they would, like, for example, they would love to have the very first Bitcoin, for example. So there's different significance to different Bitcoin as you characterize. So describing it as an NFT, I haven't heard anyone say that before, but it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, fungibility is fungibility. So a lot of people say they trace the Bitcoin through the addresses. It's irrelevant. If you look at the definition of fungibility, it doesn't name anything about the transport mechanism. Fungibility means if one item is totally and completely replaceable by another item without a change. You can't do that with frozen Bitcoin. Frozen Bitcoin is worth a lot less than unfrozen Bitcoin. If you don't believe me, I'll give you a bunch of frozen Bitcoin. You give me a bunch of free Bitcoin in return. You'll call it even Steven. Okay?
Absolutely. Well, you took away my thunder from my last question. My last question was going to be about Bitcoin and NFTs, but my last question for today instead is going to be this: is that, and I think it's a good way to conclude for today, is that recently the Veritaseum DAO, or the VeriDAO, was pleased to announce, with your permission, of course, that you're going to be accepting the Veri tokens as a discount mechanism. And you've always been a proponent of the Veri token holders, even when you wrote your response back to the SEC. So one question that I've heard people say is that they don't quite understand how that mechanism would work. How do you envision, or how would you describe how those Veri tokens might be used in the future to provide that discount for your IP?
Well, for right now, we're going to keep it relatively simple. I don't have the firm numbers in hand, so I'm going to ask you for the actual math calculations, but because that has to be worked out. This is a new paradigm, new product, new patent, new intellectual property, new everything based upon a new platform with new technology. So everything is new. So don't ask me to give you an old answer, okay? But in a nutshell, if you use Veri tokens to pay for a portion of the IP license, those Veri tokens will discount in excess of $1 worth. So you have a license that costs $10. Okay, you pay $15 worth of it in Veri tokens, or you pay $13 of it in Veri tokens, and you get a $15 discount. So your total purchase would be, I said $10, right? I'm sorry. The license costs $10. You pay $1.30 of it in Veri tokens, and you get a $1.50 discount. So you'll be 20 cents ahead of the game.
Yeah, didn't mean to put you on the spot to do real-time math there, but I get the mechanism certainly comes across.